An over-the-counter pain medication, one that like a quarter of all adults take, change just how trustworthy we think people are? And if so, is it making us trust them more or less? So welcome to the weird world of acetaminophen or paracetamol or Tylenol. So scientists have recently become infatuated with research on acetaminophen. So this is the idea that like acetaminophen reduces pain. And yes, it does reduce pain, but pain is linked to all sorts of things. Pain is linked to like empathy and trustworthiness and like how likely you are to help people, apparently. And so would acetaminophen do the same things to those things as it does to pain? I understand why they went down this avenue of research, but it kind of just seems like they're throwing things at a wall right now and seeing what sticks. Because a lot of this is just kind of haphazard findings that are almost impossible to like tie together in a neat little bow of a theory. Their understanding of pain and how that relates to social behavior, yeah, that's still in its infancy too. So for example, we see that pain is linked to empathy somewhat, but we see that like emotional pain and physical pain can kind of be the same thing. Like in my favorite study that I make all of my students read, I have them read the study where people have congenital insensitivity to pain. So basically it makes it so that they cannot feel pain, which seems like it would be a good thing, but as somebody who has a very high pain tolerance, it's pretty much only good for like tattoos. When I was 20, I herniated 3 discs and just kept working on that for like 2 weeks until the doctor was like, you need emergency surgery now. That was not a good idea to just keep working on 3 herniated discs. And you see this with patients with congenital insensitivity to pain. So for example, they have a tendency to actually die at an earlier age. Like their life expectancy is shortened because they get into so many accidents and have things like internal bleeding and broken bones without even realizing it. But intriguingly, people who have congenital insensitivity to pain, so can't feel physical pain, they can still feel emotional pain. And emotional pain, since it works on the same circuits, so now you add in that acetaminophen, paracetamol, Tylenol, and what you see is that emotional pain might be blunted too, and so maybe this is changing our social behaviors. So scientists have been kind of following this thread as far as it can go, and the most recent version of this is looking at trustworthiness. So the scientists in this case were like, okay, well, will pain relief, so this over-the-counter pain medication, will that change the likelihood of somebody trusting somebody else? So the scientists decided to ask this question in 2 different ways. And the first was like a survey questionnaire thing that was just kind of like this national survey. And the second was an experiment. And so the first, they looked at survey data and they looked at 2 specific types of things. The first question was like, how much do you use acetaminophen? And the second set of questions was about their kind of like trustworthiness and according to their neighborhood. So do you feel safe walking around your neighborhood in daylight? What about nighttime? Do you feel like you could trust your neighbor if like a weird emergency situation occurred? And they said that like this was related to trustworthiness in general. And then also like, do you feel a part of your neighborhood? What they found here was that acetaminophen actually seemed to reduce trustworthiness. Like the people who had the highest levels of acetaminophen use actually said that their neighborhood was like the most dangerous. Like they didn't trust going out at night at all. Here they found that their results like suggested that there is a connection between the 2, which, okay, there are all sorts of confounds there. So for example, like socioeconomic status of your neighborhood. I grew up in very poor neighborhoods. I also had a lot of pain, which is kind of true. Like pain is linked to socioeconomic status. And so like maybe people are just taking more of the over-the-counter pain medications because they're in more pain and they trust their neighborhood because it's objectively a worse neighborhood. And so the link there is like maybe socioeconomic status and not just pain and acetaminophen. So yeah, common flaws of your standard correlational studies. But then they went and did an experiment. And so this is an experiment they played what is known as the trust game. So in the trust game, like basically a person comes in and is playing with this anonymous other person. And they are supposed to give money to the other person. And then the amount of money that they give to the other person is like multiplied by 4 times. So they make money by giving money to the other person. But then the person has the choice to like give you money back. So they do this basically to see like how trusting you are of somebody else and if there are different things to change that. So they actually like change the expectations. They'll tell you that this person like used to give a lot of money. Like here is their record of how much money they gave. So in this experiment side of things, yeah, they actually found that acetaminophen, when they gave somebody like this sugary syrup of acetaminophen, there's also a comparable placebo. When they gave them the acetaminophen, it actually increased their trusting. So they were more willing to give people more money. And they said that it might have done this by like reducing that expectation effect. Like the amount of information they gave somebody about how much money the person had given in the past, that didn't seem to matter anymore when you were on painkillers. Yeah, the results of these studies actually had the completely opposite findings of one another. So in the survey, they said that, yeah, acetaminophen actually reduced trustworthiness. Like they thought their neighborhood was more dangerous. But in the experiment, it actually increased trustworthiness. So what is it? Yeah, here's my problem with all of these studies. Like, I think that this is going to turn out to not be a thing in the future. This is my prediction. If you read the discussion sections of these papers, I think you'll agree with me too. Because here's the problem. Like, they're trying to come up with a reason why their own study showed two different things, and they can't really come up with a good one. They're like, reputation? Question mark? They're like, this other study said that acetaminophen reduced like the physical distress caused by the threat of existential dread. So maybe there's something there. Or maybe it reduces betrayal aversion. So you are less likely to be afraid of being betrayed. How do those things go together? How do you have like existential dread plus betrayal aversion plus like expectation and reputation effects? Yeah, I don't see a theory here. Now I'm not a social psychologist, but I don't see how that all fits together. And here's my theory, it doesn't. We're just seeing these like random effects pop up, and we're not seeing the studies that say that there is no effect because we don't publish that. Welcome to science. And so we're just like getting excited by these like random things that occur that might be significant but probably aren't. But if they are significant, it seems like they have a relatively minor effect. Like they're not doing the same thing in all situations. So I wouldn't worry too much about how much your painkillers that you're taking are changing your emotional and social behavior. Who knows? Maybe like paracetamol is actually just reducing empathy on like a global scale and it's making everybody terrible. And that's why our culture is like this. I've had a day, can you tell? But honestly, we don't know what's going to happen here. There's not one sort of idea pulling this all together, but acetaminophen is doing weird things to like social behaviors and we don't know why.